Hi, Tim Sells here. In this series of videos, I'm talking about what prevents somebody from becoming a rep. And this set of videos that I'm doing is not looking at reality. In other words, the prospect isn't looking at the current reality. And I did a video, or I actually started with a survey with a team, and I asked them, hey, what objections are you guys getting? What questions are you getting? And as they told me in the surveys, it was people at the top or that get in early make most of the money. I've proven that wrong in another video. That it's a scam. I've proven that wrong. Few make money. I prove that wrong. Okay? And so even though I've proven them wrong, they're still frustrated. In other words, the rep is frustrated. And so the last video I did had to do with federal banks. All right. And I just basically explained at a very deep level way back in the beginning of the 1900s how this came to be. And it's because you would have to understand this piece in reference to the media. Okay. And so in this particular video, I'm going even deeper into another topic that will probably be just as interesting, which is New World Order or one world government. And what I'm going to basically do is I'm going to say, is there any evidence to it? And if there is what would be that purpose? So that's what I'm going to talk about. So the first thing that I need to talk about here is I just have to thank you guys for your comments in the last video. All right? Like, boy, did it drive my patriotism for every country in the world. In other words, all of you from different countries and everything. I just really, really appreciated your input. All right, and so let's enjoy this one. Okay, so as I covered in the last video, I'm going to cover it a little bit different this time. But there's a true hierarchy, and that's the first state. In other words, I want you to just picture that there is an ideal, right? And you would have to be functioning off an ideal, what you want, before you even set about and saying, is this fair? Is that fair? Is this? And, blah, 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 right? You have to start off with an ideal. And this is not only kind of like the true hierarchy, but it's the ideal. You've got God/creator, and God/creator created man or woman, each being equal. I am no greater than you, and you are no greater than me. You're not less than me, you're not more than me, and vice versa. All right, so that has to be first established. And then you don't have any room for racism. You don't have any room for argument, right? It's just pure, hey, I respect you, you respect me, that's it, okay? And then man, woman created government for the people, by the people. Okay, so we create them to govern us the way we want them to govern us. And government creates corporations. And in fact, United States government created themselves as a corporation in 1871. All right, and then government and corporations create titles. All right, titles, there's president, vice president, secretary, governor, lieutenant governor, taxpayer, employee, citizen, individual, resident, police, agent, FDA, FTC, CIA, FBI, ATF, EPA. All right, you gotta laugh at this, about all these organizations that are created when we just want a government we the people want. And I don't know where all those came from, right? And you probably don't either. And so I made reference in the last time having to do with is that a lot of these, they wear imitation badges. Let me see. I think I've still got this Canon badge here. So I put a badge in my pocket, and that authorizes me to do something. And it pretends to elevate above that we're created equal. And who gave that title? Well, this or this. gave the title. All right. And I kind of explained last time a little bit is that I got myself into a little bit of trouble. And that is that I was in U.S. Navy Special Forces, and they gave me a badge that authorized me to kill somebody I don't even know. And when you really look at it, I land, get on a battlefield, and I'm in their terrain, right? I'm in their zone. And then I have authorization to kill them, and they are trying to defend their space. They're trying to defend their country. And so they kind of have a right to shoot me, but I only have this pretended right. And I had to negotiate that within myself as to whether or not I really wanted that authority given to me. And it's something that most times you don't think about, because you go into training and you are drawing weapons, you're shooting, you're doing different things, and you just learn that game, okay? And you never even think about it. And so when you see, and you could put any of these titles, okay? Nurse, doctor, anything else you could put into there, and they're being deployed to do something that some of them I don't think is really asked the question, the ethical question, in saying, do I have this right? Right? And so I just want you to just have that view, and because it makes a whole lot of sense, and you will now understand all of my videos and the way that I talk about that you never disrespect a prospect. You're there to serve them, and that's the only thing that you're there for. There's only one business in the world, and that's making people's lives better, period. Okay? And so, so no man or woman has a right to tread on another. If you can do it to me, I can do it to you. If you can shoot me, I can shoot you. If you can put something in a needle and inject it, and that has no ingredients on the label, then I have that right too, to you, right? In other words, that's the way it has to be. Okay, with that idea in mind, I'll advance. Okay, so, and also, just one more thing. I wanted to make sure that when I chose my next profession, this is before I got into network marketing, that I wanted to be on the right team. In other words, it seemed as though that every corporation, everything that I was even around or anything, was putting me in the same predicament. And so I wanted to make sure that I found something that wasn't. And that's how I found network marketing. Okay, so let's talk about this new world order, sometimes called one world government and world governance. All right, so you'll see them interchanged. And I think that each time we get, when I say we, that's a troublesome word. When people start talking about it, then they want to shift it to something else for some reason. All right. So in what I'm doing is that if I just show you one thing, you'll say, I don't know, that's kind of plausibly deniable. Right? It seems little, but see, what I taught on, like, I think it was 2 videos back, is that what you have to do to evaluate something is that you have to plot their actions. All right? Whatever it is that you're trying to evaluate, you have to plot the actions that they're doing. And as you plot their dones, in other words, check, done, as you plot their dones, you can tell whether what they say as their purpose, about me or about the company or whatever it is, you can see whether or not they're doing what they say they're going to do, right? And you can also see if they're way off course. And so that's what I've basically done here. And I show you, I reveal to you exactly how I do it. And that's my higher purpose in what I'm doing, is that I just want to show you how this all comes about. Okay, so in 1920, Woodrow, I talked a lot about him last video, founded the League of Nations. Okay, and so that was trying to pull together nations together to talk and to advance so-and-so. In 21, there was the Council on Foreign Relations, and that was founded, and that was an organization that would study foreign countries and then advise governments on how to go forward working with that particular country, whether it be war or whether it be some sort of peace action. In 1945, the U.S. President, Harry Truman, quoted, "It will be just as easy for nations to get along in a republic of the world as it is for us to get along in a republic of the United States." And that's kind of a bizarre statement in 1945, simply because that's assuming that all of those countries want us and that we want them, okay? So what I'm talking about is that you've got these scattered nations and you have these cultures, and these cultures are very meaningful to people. And, like I remember I was in the Philippines doing an operation, and the person who was going to train me in jungle warfare had never stepped on concrete in his life. Now, how is that government going to come together? You see, so that's a little scenario where that's a arrogant statement, if you ask me. In 1945, October of United Nations Charter. Okay, so there's another organization, United Nations. Charter include International Police Force. An international police force. Well, I don't want an international police coming into my country. Like, what are you here for? And then in 1950, James Warburg, member on Council of Foreign Affairs, Council on Foreign Relations, quote, "Whereas in order to achieve universal peace and justice, the present charter of the United Nations should be changed to provide a true world government constitution." 1950, Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands established the Bilderbergers, international politicians and bankers who meet secretly on an annual basis. Okay, and so then, and I also got kind of curious about this, all these little lines and bright things around the top of this thing. There's some reference to it in a quote by George Bush having to do with light, 1,000 points of light or something like that. And then I looked this up right here, and I put it into Google Translator, and it came out, New Order of the Ages. All right, close, but okay, let's keep going. See, I'm plotting things so that you can not look at a piece of information by itself only, but you can line them up. It's senior datum, and as they line up, they tell a story. That's what it is. In 1991, George Bush Sr. said, "What is at stake is more than one small country. It's a big idea, a new world order." Okay, so that was really the first time that track, as far as I could find, hit the world. But I was a little bit bummed by one small country, because I kind of like this one small country. And wherever you're from, you probably like your small country. It's got culture, right? So it's got language, things like that, right? And then David Rockefeller, our good buddy, he stated, "We are grateful to," and by the way, I have the audio of this. I'm afraid to play it. I've got in fact, a video on it, and I'm afraid to play it. So I know it's for real. I have it in possession. "We are grateful to the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Time Magazine, and other great publications whose directors have attended our meetings and respected their promises of discretion for almost 40 years. It would have been impossible for us to develop our plan for the world if we had been subject to the lights of publicity during those years. But the world is now more sophisticated and prepared to march towards a world government. The supranational sovereignty of an intellectual elite and world bankers is surely preferable to the national auto-determination practiced in past centuries." All right. If you need to pause the video and read that and ingest it and try to digest it, please do so. But I'm going to move on because this is very, very telling. And now you can see what I mean by when these senior datum start to line up, they tell a story. Now, one other thing is that this is not a conspiracy theory. That's our plan for the world. That is a conspiracy. It's not a theory. And so, they use conspiracy theory to dilute your effort in investigation and evaluation. That's the whole purpose of somebody saying, oh, that's a conspiracy theory, is they're just trying to limit you. It just means for me, just keep looking. I'll find the out point or I'll find the plus point. Okay, so the first clue that I got when I looked at this was United Nations. That looks pretty like they're wanting to pull everybody together, right? And so what is their stated intention? The guarantor of peace throughout the world. That is their stated intention. Okay, so if we wanted to plot that, we can just point it right straight to peace throughout the world. All right. So we'll plot it and we'll see what the actions look like. The United Nations, UN for short, was created at the end of World War II as an international peacekeeping organization and a forum for resolving conflicts between nations. And then former Secretary of State John Foster Dulles, like Dulles Airport, stated, treaty law can override U.S. Constitution. Okay, so when you sign a treaty at the UN, then, in other words, as a country, then it can jump over the top of the U.S. Constitution. I find that troubling, right? And so that was a little thing that most people don't know about. 1961, the United States disarmament document, 7277. And it was basically the breakdown of all of our weapons in our military. Okay, that is not something that you would want to do in a country. And I can imagine the difficulty of all of these nations coming together and all of them saying, okay, yeah, sure. Did you really get rid of your weapons? You know what I mean? In other words, that's going to be a tough task. And I don't remember, and I couldn't find anything about where people were voting in the United States as to whether or not they wanted to hand away all of our weapons. Okay? Presents the formula for gradually turning the U.S. military force over to the UN. All right? All right. So I underlined that word turn because if you haven't seen the video series, it's like, I don't know, on Netflix or Vudu or something like that, it's called Turn. The show, it's a really, really great show. No state would have a military power to challenge the progressively strengthened UN peace force. So basically, all military forces were going to go to the United Nations. And from there, then anybody who wanted to pick a fight, well, they would lose because of the superior firepower. That was their idea. All right, so the origins of the United Nations. So I'm going backwards. Now that you see the story, now let's go backwards just a little bit and say, who was dreaming up this thing? So Stalin, Joseph Stalin, he wrote a book called Marxism and the National and Colonial Question. Okay, so the communists have always viewed world government as stepping stone to world communism. You got to understand at that particular time, everybody, you want to talk about phobic. Well, everyone was talking about the commies are coming, all right? And so in other words, they're after our country. And they were after some countries, but they weren't necessarily after ours, I didn't think, until I did all this research. And so that's kind of the very first start of it. And then Earl Brown, former head of the U.S. Communist Party, said the American communists worked energetically and tirelessly to lay the foundations for the United Nations, which we were sure would come into existence. Okay, so as everybody was coming to America because it was the promised land, it was freedom, it was all these things, well, there was a group that began to grow quite a bit of Communist Party inside the United States, wanting to convert it to communism. Russian defectors viewed the United Nations as a respectable front, in other words, fake group, from which to conduct subversion under the guise of helping people. All right, so the subversion refers to a process by which the values and principles of a system in place are contradicted or reversed. Okay, so if you're going to subvert, let's say that you wanted to subvert somebody's religion, then they have a belief, and then you're going to basically take each tenet of that person's belief and try to prove it wrong, and so that they would convert over into something else or nothing at all. So that's what subversion means. And so the Russian defectors, they were basically saying, like, this is the coolest idea I've ever seen, this United Nations, because it's going to allow us to take it over as being and make it communistic. All right, so our main kind of actor in this story is Alger Hiss. And the establishment of the United Nations and Charter, both as United States Department official and as UN official. Okay, so this is our primary person. So if you can imagine a group of people who have worked really hard to create this organization called the United Nations, and they're going to pick people to implement their ideas. And they chose this gentleman right here. And he created the charter. And this is the charter in this box right here. A big, thick document that's got all of the things in it. He just happened to be a former U.S. Communist Party member. The statute of limitations had expired, thus he wasn't tried for treason. He did go to jail, though. He employed 494, in other words, he hired 494 persons to the United Nations. Here he is sitting at the United Nations. Okay? So, that's an interesting one. Here is Hiss, Stalin, and Roosevelt, and Churchill. Okay, so Hiss is back here. That's Stalin. I don't like the president sitting next to that, right? So it's just he was the dictator at the time, and it was what Americans most didn't want. You know, like people were leaving Europe to come to America because of the sovereignty, the individual sovereignty and freedom. And the last thing they wanted to see was a president sitting there. Okay, other members of the U.S. Communistic Party. Okay, so I'm going to run through these real quick. You are welcome to pause the video if you want, okay? And read it, get search terms for you to do your own research, whatever you want to do. But Harry Dexter White, complete control over foreign affairs in the Treasury Department, chaired the committee that established the United Nations multi-billion-dollar International Monetary Fund. Okay, so he also was with the Communist Party. And so that was a funneling of money, okay, of taxpayer money. And then this used U.S. taxpayers' money to build socialism in the U.S. and underdeveloped countries. Okay, so the countries that they were trying to convert into socialism, as well as implementing people into different command posts so that they could deploy it from there. All right, and so then here's all of these as well. And if you want to really dive deep on this, these two books are the best that I know. All right, and they'll just timeline you all the way through the entire process. All right, so let's move on. Let's move on to the next group that was formed. In 1954, Bilderberg Group was formed. This right here is the Bilderberg Hotel. And that's where they had their very first meeting, and that's why they're called the Bilderberg Group. And if you walk right through that door right there and you turn left and you go down that hallway, you're going to walk up and see these pictures. They're still there today. And these are not life-size. They're bigger than life-size because you'll stand there and you're about up to Rockefeller's nose and about as wide as his tie. In other words, they're bigger than life. And I don't know anybody any hotel that has that going on inside their hotel, right? So I guess it made them famous. And but their pictures are there. And there's Henry Kissinger. He's going to come up quite a bit, and it's very interesting to have them side by side. All right. So what is the Bilderberg Group really about? So it's about 120 to 150 people. They meet each year to discuss policy. And they represent about 1,000 companies. And so when you look at the table of the 120 to 150, and then you go off and say, what do those people own also? And what does this company own and this company own of these other companies and so forth? And so you'll figure out that it's about 1,000 companies that make up the Bilderberg Group. All right, so they're politicians, international bankers, and top corporation leaders who meet secretly on an annual basis. And the main thing, and I have no problem with people meeting and talking and stuff like that, but we, the people, did not elect these people. And so if they're going there and they're changing policy, or they're going there and they're coming back and then they're implementing something, or they've made a deal for this country to spy on our people and then sell the information to the government, or vice versa, or something like that, right? So that's where we get the ibby-jibbies about this stuff, is that it's done in secrecy. So why the secrecy? This happened, this is just an example, all right? So France in 1992, 121 participants from 18 European countries in the United States and Canada. They represented government, diplomacy, politics, business, law, labor, education, journalism, the military, the institutes specializing in national and international studies. All right, so that was what was stated on the agenda. And like I say, it's fine to talk about these things, but come back, and if you're going to implement something, let us vote on it. You know, like, tell us what went on. All right. So then there's another group, yet another group, the Trilateral Commission, trying to get 3 super states to come together. And that super state would be the combination of Europe, North America, and the Far East, which would include Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan, a couple others. Okay, so, and what they really saw it as is that if they could just get these 3, then that would usher in the rest of them, and we would have a one world government. And there's another group, and it's called the World Economic Forum. And it's typically just called Davos, okay? And it's because that's the location where they do this meeting most of the time. And they were the ones that created the concept of the Great Reset. It's about 750 experts from international business, governmental, and academic communities working in 60 separate task forces. Okay, so now these people are assigned tasks that they go out and implement. Okay, so there's you're welcome to get that URL, and maybe I can put it in the description so you can go and watch a video on that. So the gentleman who started this, his name is Schwab, and he was born in Germany, little known business professor at the University of Geneva. In 1971, he founded the World Economic Forum, precursor, the European Management Forum. Okay, and then by somehow it caught on and got very powerful. If you want to learn all of the beginning steps of this organization, Discrete Power is the best book. Okay, so then a bizarre thing happens where you've got the United Nations creating a relationship, a partnership between the World Economic Forum. Okay, so there's the Schwab guy. And in 2009, the WEF published a 600-page report entitled The Global Redesign Initiative, which called for a new system of global governing. Now, who's he? He's a small-time professor who started a group, all right? But now he's creating a new system of government, one in which the decisions of the governments could be made secondary to multi-stakeholder-led initiatives in which corporations would play a defining role. Okay, now we got something plotted on here that definitely shows a bad intent, okay? Because that is jumping over the top of our government and controlling people now, okay? So that's where it went very, very wrong. The Great Reset Initiative. Okay, so he's got partners. BlackRock, $10 billion of assets. Okay, so that's, 10 trillion. It's about 9 trillion, give or take. So really? BlackRock, Google, Apple, Amazon, NBC, JP Morgan, Kaiser Permanente, dozens of others. And they have become a group who has this, what was that, 600, this new system of global governing. So why don't they Zoom those meetings, all of them, right? In other words, what's going on? Why do they do that? All right, so it's trillions in resources to rebuild society as they see fit in the wake of the pandemic. Okay, so this news network is basically filming something, and they say to implement Great Reset of capitalism. So now we see it, okay? And the one of the greatest quotes is from Mussolini. Fascism should more appropriately be called corporatism because it is a merger of state and corporate power. All right, so now he was a dictator and very, very, like a powerful guy. He was charismatic. And one of the troubles that you have with governments is that when the people do not know how to evaluate, they're not looking at like data points like I'm talking to you right now about. Nobody's like plotting this stuff. And so what do you end up doing on election day? Well, I like him better or her better. And it doesn't matter if it is who's running for the fire department or who's running for the mayor or who's running for governor. You don't know these people. You haven't plotted them. And so you choose a red versus blue. Right? And you're just throwing, putting a blindfold on and throwing a dart. And that's the problem is that he was a very gregarious, man, and he pulled a lot of attention, fun, but then he became a dictator of the country. So that's the problem with most situations when we go out to place a vote. All right, and so in May of 1992, Evian, France, Bilderberg quote. It was transcribed from a tape recording made by one of the Swiss delegates. And this is from Kissinger. Today, Americans would be outraged if UN troops entered Los Angeles to restore order. Tomorrow, they will be grateful. This is especially true if they were told there was an outside threat from beyond, whether real or promulgated. In other words, a false flag, faked. That threatened our very existence. It is then that all peoples of the world will plead with world leaders to deliver them from this evil. The one thing every man fears is the unknown. When presented with this scenario, individual rights will be willingly relinquished for the guarantee of their well-being granted to them by their world government. Okay? So this is the kind of conversation that's going on. So I could not locate this tape recording. All right, so what does that mean? It could be true or false. Okay, well, what do you do in a scenario like that? Do you just say, well, because I don't have the evidence, then it therefore didn't exist? Well, when I went to fact check this, I found a reference where somebody was saying, fact checker, like Wikipedia, was saying that he wasn't even at this particular meeting. But I was able to ascertain the documents of this meeting, but not an audio track of it. Okay, so this is the agenda, and right there's the agenda in each one of the steps, and he is listed, Henry A. Kissinger, for the Soviet Union discussion, and then also over here in the evolving West versus West relationship, and he's the panelists. Okay, and so the star beside his name means a member of the steering committee. Okay, so you kind of get the idea about when, just because you read something and there's not a tape recording, if you go back and you listen to Henry Kissinger and how he talks and the, let me just say, arrogance that he speaks, and his disdain for other men who he feels as though he's far superior than. All right, so he has talked that way. I've heard it. And so he does have that arrogance. So I have to plot it as a probable, but not for sure. Okay. So one world government, 1994, David Rockefeller, again, remarks at United Nations Ambassadors Dinner, this present window of opportunity during which a truly peaceful and interdependent world order might be built will not be open for too long. We are on the verge of a global transformation. All we need is the right major crisis, and the nations will accept the new world order. Okay, we're starting to see some lineup. And there's another one that had reference to this very similar thing. And I'll show it to you in just a second. But first, I want to show you a quick video clip. Okay?
Is it okay you turn off the camera and then I speak?
Oh, turn off the camera?
Yeah.
Do I not have a right to have the camera?
I'm not giving you permission to check my face, so...
Okay, are you a public servant?
I'm
or
United Nations Security Officer.
Okay.
Okay.
This is my city, and so I have a right to film.
This is United Nations compound?
A United Nations compound?
Yes.
This is a compound?
Yeah. Since Sunday evening, we took over this compound. This is international territory. When you step outside, it's U.S. Here is international territory. This is UN compound.
All right, so I'll never forget when, a friend of mine, this is in Utah, and I live in Utah, and he sent me this, and he goes, bro, is this real? And I look at it and I'm like, wow, that's concerning, right? And it is concerning. And she, with her very, very important badge, she felt the authority that she could throw an American out of that building, right? And and that's about what they've got, you know what I'm saying? So it is comical from my past, and I know it might be very, very scary to even think of it that way if you've not been in the scenarios that I've been in, but really and truly. But they feel as though they have the authority to, like in this particular situation, she was just wanting to film, and because the lady who was behind it, she's a reporter, she couldn't believe this lady was throwing her out. Right? And she's saying, you can't film my face. Okay. So now let's go back to this stated objective. Okay. So I've plotted a whole bunch of places that kind of head down this line right here. All right. And what is the the purpose again? It's the guarantor of peace throughout the world. Okay, so let's see how much peace has been created throughout the world. Okay, so right after that, we had the Korean War, and that was a 3-year war. And then after that, we had Cuba. What a mess there. And then we had Vietnam, which was a long war. In 65, we had Dominican Republic. And then in 82, we had Lebanon and Grenada and Panama and Gulf and Somalia and Haiti and Bosnia. Really? So how does that organization have any credibility? I'll tell you the only reason it has zero credibility, it has any credibility at all, is because not enough people will evaluate. We have organizations that are sitting in, like, let's say those initials. So we have, like so many organizations, associations, whose purpose is to do a particular thing, but yet there's no results. They've been given billions and billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars to cure something, and they've not. In fact, one of them that I'm thinking about that I can't even talk about, he had a heart attack while talking in the middle of this thing, and I'm like, oh my gosh, are you kidding? How can you stand up there? How can you have any credibility? All right, so it's kind of like a war on instead of solving the problem. And we're not pulling our money and saying, hey, you've not done anything yet. You've not accomplished anything yet. The statistics are no different this year than they were 70 years ago or 50 years ago when you started. Okay, so that's kind of the way that's the one thing that I loved about the military is that you had to get a result. Okay, and in network marketing, it's the same, right? And so that's kind of the way that I view that. So the Watson Institute estimated that just this one war in Afghanistan, okay, is $6.4 trillion. Okay, so that's about 20 years, right? And that's taxpayers' money, and we've spent $7,600 there. And why? War on terror? Okay. I don't know about you, but I have yet to have somebody who came up and terrorized me. But I'm paying a whole lot of money that they're not. But I also see a whole lot of people come across borders right now. And so would it make sense to secure our borders first and then fight a $6.4 trillion war? So 801,000 people have died, 335,000 civilians, 21 million have been displaced due to violence. And that doesn't even bring into account all of the men and women who came back from those wars with some sort of mental problems. Okay? It's a whole nother world when you go into combat situations. All right? Your buddy gets killed. You spend the rest of your life saying, why not me? Why didn't I do something different? Why did I suggest we be there? In other words, all the noise that goes on inside your head. Okay? And so it's countless. And then how about of the 800,000 people, that's a displaced dad in some cases, a displaced mom in some cases. The cost of war is ugly. And so if you're standing out there and you're saying that's who we are, you're not. You're not. Okay? What you really wanted was to go in and take over countries so that there was no competition for your business. Okay? That is what, as I plotted along, what is going on. And that's why I believe that the business idea has caught on faster than all those other organizations. All right, so there was a little bit of a clue. And this particular one has to do with, I'm not going to call him Lord Rothschild. He is Jacob Rothschild. And he made a comment in 2018. Okay, so it looks like August or so of 2018. And this was in a Zero Hedge document. That's a website. And I could not find, and when I went back to that URL, it wasn't there, but fortunately I had screenshotted that a long time ago. And so here's basically what that says. All right, so Jacob Rothschild has made his latest warning to date. This time focusing on the global economic system that was established after World War II. Now we're talking about United Nations. We're talking about all these things that I have shown you, right? And which he believes is now in jeopardy. The billionaire banker, no, he's a trillionaire, pointed to the U.S.-China trade war and the Eurozone crisis as the key problems putting economic order at risk. And the lack of, quote, common approach, end quote, a reference to the gradual unwind of globalization in the wake of whoever was president at that time, that has made, quote, cooperation today much more difficult. Okay, so that is an interesting statement, okay, because I hadn't heard any of this jeopardy, any of this economic risk, economic order at risk, and things like that. And so, I don't know, it kind of created an interesting feeling when I read it, is that they have tried and tried and tried and tried and tried. They've had so many different organizations trying to do this. And I just view that something is off on it, and I'll explain that in just 1 second as I'm wrapping up. So what have we plotted? Timeline of events that proved by authorities, meaning government officials, attempting to create world governance. That's real. It's non-deniable. You can't say, no, there's no such thing as a group trying to create a world government. No, it's definitely true. Lots of organizations set up in the attempt: League of Nations, United Nations, the Council on Foreign Relations, Advisors to Government, which are advisors to government, Bilderberg, Trilateral, World Economic Forum. Lots of mistakes, poor choices, and bad people involved. Happens often when intention is crossed. They must hire unethical people to do one thing but say another. All right, that was a mouthful, but I know you know the feeling. And that is that when you say that you're going to work, but you end up at the golf course, right? Okay, so either your intention was not true, or you changed your mind in mid-stroke, right? So that's kind of the operation, and it just, when you get a lot of people involved, what was that, like 460 something employees that were hired by a person of the Communist Party and who is supposed to be on a peacekeeping effort? Okay, like how do you make that big of a blunder? The only way you can do it is that you're trying to hire somebody to implement an evil strategy, but you have to act as though that you're something else. And that's what creates such a mess. It's very, very hard to do. And so that's just the way that I'm looking at it after all of this additional research that I've done, because I can see it really no other way. So I'm going to give you my opinion. All right. So do not quote me from the standpoint that this is fact. This is just of me plotting. All right. So including everything I've shown you and plotted, throughout the past 2 years, I've seen a lot of countries following a similar protocol. And you know what I'm talking about. It's almost verbatim in a lot of countries. And so, as I talked about in the last video, that world government, the financier, or the financiers of all of these world governments, what they have done is that they got a whole lot of people on the same page, okay? And so I can't dismiss that because I've seen it. I have a lot of, business partners all over the world, And so we chat on Telegram and such, and they're showing me what's going on in each country. And so anyway, that's real, okay? But the people of those countries are rebelling. They don't like it, right? So the idea of one world government has lost a lot of ground with the people. For some reason, this thing has caused us to kind of go, what? I just woke up from a long nap. When did this start? You know, and I'm showing you documents from like 1919 and stuff like that, right? So in the other video. So now you kind of get the idea that that's the, because you're probably seeing that. The only way that you wouldn't be seeing that is that you're watching different news channels. Now, there's an attempt for corporations to try to implement UN agenda and govern. That is the new attempt. I think the other ones were not as successful as they thought they would. Okay? That's why, you know, like they kept on, you know, like saying, you know, time is imminent, you know, all we need is blah, 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 and things like that. So, but now corporations are going to try to drive it home. And that's going to be, you know, perhaps, you know, tracking, taking away, you can only do this if you do this, and that kind of a thing. So it's kind of going to be a force thing. People want freedom. Governments want control. That's the conflict. Okay? And so the only time a government is going to have a rebellion is when they're going against the wants and desires of their people. All right? So that's the, so as they try to do this, it creates a lot of friction. And so, especially when there is so much comparable data. In other words, it's not as though that there's a vacuum and it just doesn't feel right in your gut. No. There is so much evidence to the contraries, right? That you almost can't believe that they're still trying. Okay, so that's the level that I've seen it. And then I'll just tie off on this, which is network marketing offers the people freedom. We are not an enemy to these groups. We frustrate them, but we're not an enemy to these groups. In other words, we're not attacking this group. That would do us no good. I mean, it's one of the senior rules in combat, which is, don't attack a strong point. But when there's a whole lot of people who are very unhappy with it, but just network marketing, what is it that we believe in? Well, we believe in getting customers and getting reps and teaching them how to get customers and get reps. And we prefer a product that's on the healthy side of things. We choose most of the time. We don't really want genetically modified organisms. We don't want drugs unless we absolutely have to have them. We want that freedom. We want the freedom to be able to have sovereignty. In other words, have our own life, to choose the schools of our choice and so forth. But when these things are just constantly rammed down our throat, people don't like it. And network marketing gives people like that solutions, right? And so I hope this helps you. One other thing that I want to share with you is you might write this down because I'm just now creating this channel. In fact, I created it just a little while ago, and I'll share more information there. Also got some more things to cover. I've got some great stuff on media that you're going to really want to see for real. And I think that wraps it up. I appreciate your watching. And please comment down below. Let me know what you really think about this. What have you witnessed here and also in the past? Do your research if you want to. I tried to factually show every single data point and the source of it. And so, and then also, don't forget to come here as well as like the channel and comment. And if you haven't subscribed, you might think of doing so. Thank you.